Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome everybody from wherever you are in the world and whatever time it is for you. Welcome to our free webinar on long COVID natural solutions. And we are ever so happy that you've joined us. And so we'll be here for the next 1.5 hours, and we've got some really great content and things to share with you today. Just the format of today's session. So we're going to have a presentation by M. Salim Khan, and of course we'll introduce him and who he is. We'll also have a presentation by Dr. Yasser Abu Namus. And then in the last part of the session, we will have Q&A. So at that point, we'll open up the chat. The chat is closed at the moment, but when we begin the Q&A session, we will open up the chat. So feel free to make your own notes of your questions in the meanwhile as we go through, and then we'll open up at the end. Okay, let's get into it then. If we can go to the next slide. So we are the College of Medicine and Healing Arts based in Leicester, UK, and this program is actually in collaboration with the National Incubation Center in Pakistan. Of course, this program is for general information. It's not a substitute for personal medical advice, and so please note the disclaimer. This is building on the 4-part in-depth webinar series we have on COVID-19. We have the recordings on our website, so I do highly recommend everyone checks that out, because there's a lot of content there which is in-depth, which we won't be repeating in those details today. Here's where you can go to our website. That's where you can find the natural COVID-19 natural solutions recordings. And these are, the couple of buttons that really will take you to where you need to go. Thank you for the support of Mr. Parvez Abbasi Saab. He's not actually with us today. He's the director at the National Incubation Center. And really he's supported us in making this, the previous webinar series, as well as this webinar available to you all. Today, who we do have to represent the NIC is Numair. So Numair, please, we welcome you and we thank you for your support and for introducing our program today. Please, Numair.
And thank you so much for your introductions. It's a true pleasure, very humbled and honored to be here in the presence of Salim Hakim Saab. I am representing the National Incubation Center Islamabad today, which is a hub of technology innovation in Islamabad, Pakistan. We are looking to foster startups to solve the problems that we face today. And as you know, COVID has created a whole new range of problems which require new solutions. And we're very happy to be partnering with Hakim Salim Saab and the College of Medicine and Healing Arts, which has a fantastic program available in England and online, which if you have not checked out, you must. And we're very excited about today's session because it is very relevant to the problems that frighten us the most when it comes to COVID, and that is the long-term effect of COVID potentially on some people. So we're really looking forward to hearing about the Unani Tibb solutions and remedies that we can implement in our personal lives or for a friend or loved one in our lives to help improve our health and the health of others around us. Thank you so much, Hussein and Salim Team Sahab. Salim, Salim Saab, would you like to unmute your mic?
Assalamu alaikum everyone. Auzubillahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Alhamdulillah rabbil alameen. Assalatu wassalamu ala rasulil kareem. Can I just check that people are able to hear us really? How can we do that?
I can hear you.
Yeah, we can open up the chat. I think everything is coming through, but what I'll do is I'll open up the chat for a few
Just in
seconds.
case anyone's having difficulty, then there's no point us working for an hour and a half and then people not able to participate or not able to hear.
Yeah. Yeah. Alhamdulillah, we're getting affirmative messages through in the chat. It seems like people can hear us.
Okay, all right.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, so again, first of all, my very many thanks to Hussein for putting all this together and helping us this afternoon, and also NIC in Pakistan, Islamabad, and in particular Parvez Saab and Numair. And also a very special thank you to Dr. Yasser, who's got up very early in America to join us, and inshallah he'll be making a contribution specifically with the one or two case examples. Okay, so just a quick reminder really that, this COVID-19 started according to these versions it was declared on 31st of December 2019 in Wuhan, China. A cluster of cases were reported first as pneumonia by the Chinese health officials. And then on 11th of March 2020, the World Health Organization declared COVID-19 as a global pandemic and deemed it as the most significant public health emergency since the Spanish flu pandemic of 1918. And really many of us, no matter where we're living, nearly all of us are affected by this situation in many ways, in ways that I think humanity hasn't experienced this kind of situation. So that's just a little bit of the, and here are the few kind of aspects of what is known as the long COVID. So patients who are really having COVID and then they're finding that after 2 to 4 weeks, they continue to suffer with some of the symptoms. And then there are various levels of what they call long COVID. As you can see from the slide, some last 2 weeks. After 2 weeks, it's considered COVID if people are not recovered. And then some people go on to be in unhealthy situation or with symptoms even after 12 weeks. And this is called post-COVID-19 syndrome. So there's a slight differential in the type of long COVID. And then there are these various names really, which people, in particular the public, have come up with, such as long haulers, post-acute COVID-19, persistent COVID, and long-term COVID, post-COVID-19 syndrome, and ongoing COVID. So there are various descriptions of it. Now, definition of, again, long COVID. It is a working definition by various people, in particular the professionals. And here you can see that 2 or more weeks after the COVID onset, and people don't return to the baseline health. And then again, signs and symptoms continue. Acute COVID continues after 4 weeks. ongoing symptoms after 12 weeks, and then one which we just mentioned is post-COVID-19 syndrome. That's the kind of final stage of it in a way. And these are some of the symptoms of long COVID. The 5 on your left really seems to be the most common symptoms, fatigue, and it's in that order of occurrence. So fatigue is number 1, and then headaches, attention disorder, which means a lot of mental related problem, hair loss, and then shortness of breath. And there are some others such as cough, joint pain, fever, chest pain, and issues to do with the heart. So these are the symptoms of long COVID. Less common, but also some patients report a range of symptoms, and you can see these here, ranging from cardiovascular, respiratory, renal, again, dermatological, skin, and neurological. Loss of smell and taste seems to be one of those, and psychiatric issues really. According to government of UK, there are estimated to be 2 million people who have long COVID, but this seems to be an underestimate. Globally, we don't know really. It's work in progress. Some of the risk factors for long COVID are older people seem to be more vulnerable, higher amongst women, and higher amongst people who are overweight, and higher within people who are smokers and those who live in poor areas. And again, interestingly, the last one, higher in people who have been admitted to hospitals. Okay, what are some of the possible solutions from our point of view and experiences? Let's just have a look at a Quranic ayah really, and I'll just read the English translation. Allah says that corruption has appeared throughout the land and sea by reason of what the hands of people have earned, so he may let them taste part of the consequences of what they have done, that perhaps they will return to righteousness. Again, this is a very broad ayah, and really if we just focus on one area which most of us are familiar with in terms of what has happened to the global ecology, we can begin to see that how weather patterns have become extreme almost all over the world, the pollution, and really the signs and the symptoms that unless we change our so-called modern lifestyle, the whole humanity and the planet itself is in danger of collapsing. This is one aspect that how human behavior leads to massive destruction. We can talk about it in terms of the pollution of the seas and destruction of the forest and so on and so forth. Of course, for us in these traditions of health and well-being, we don't see the health of the individual as an isolated factor. So we see the whole person and the whole creational paradigm, and you can begin to see that humans have a lot to do with health and disease really, and COVID no exception. In a way, in many societies, what we've seen with COVID, that it's uncovered so many injustices and inequalities and problems in our societies and in humanity as a whole. However, as always, there is a hope in that this suffering and this inappropriate behavior by humanity as a whole can be a source of reawakening and realization and perhaps changing our behavior as well. So this is a quotation from Rumi, that the wound is the place where the light enters. again, just a brief recap, really, that the traditions of natural medicine are the oldest traditions of healthcare. Until about 200 years ago, these were the main traditions that sustained humanity. And many of them go back thousands of years, as you'll see from this slide, and old cultures and people have these traditions. It was only in the last 100 years that these traditions have been kind of partly demonized and partly controlled and managed in a way that they can't offer, or they're not allowed to offer the solutions to human disease and suffering. But we're going to share some of those this afternoon with you today, inshallah. Obviously, there are many different streams and traditions ranging from Chinese medicine, Ayurveda, Hippocratic or Unani medicine, Prophetic Medicine or Tibb-un-Nabawi. And then there are whole modalities of what is called Complementary and Alternative medicine. So we hope that we'll be able to share some ideas from many of these traditions in the context of how we can address and minimize the impact of and treat the long COVID in particular, but also the acute COVID. And again, you really, in a way, these traditions, there is a unity in where these traditions, some of the underlying principles or philosophies or paradigms are very similar. The first one is that really these are all natural, they're safe, effective, and affordable, and empower the individual, i.e. the whole idea is that each human being has an innate fitra and an innate intelligence, which we call tabiyat, which each person is endowed with from the Creator to help to preserve their health and well-being and to regulate and to maintain the normal functions and the balance and the homeostasis. And really, this is an idea going back to thousands of years. And it is this that really promotes and develops the immunity and the healing. And it is the healer inside of each individual. Again, we just want to touch really that the whole epistemology and the cosmology and the approach is very different from contemporary industrial medicine. And essentially each person has what we call three treasures. These are the endowments which God has given to each human being. And it is that preservation and management of this, and really that's achieved through synchronization or living in harmony with fitra, again, natural rhythms. And then third is that really we'll be sharing with you some of the top remedies, natural remedies. They are known as elixirs or rasayans, rejuvenations, and there are some new concepts such as adaptogenic remedies. So we'll be sharing a few of those with you so you can benefit from those, inshallah. So the pathways to recovery really, in one sense, they're very easy because, again, the whole idea is balance at the root and the heart of these traditions, balance in the person, in the relationships, and in the ecology, but we'll talk about the individual internal balance. And these are really the 6 pathways, sometimes known as the 6 lifestyle factors. Once these 6 lifestyle factors are understood and managed by each person, this becomes, the balance becomes easier for the individual to maintain and to recover. And if one or more of these 6 lifestyle factors are not understood or not very well managed, then really this is the beginning of the disease. And COVID-19, both acute and chronic, is no exception. If we have time, we'll look at the individuality of the person, which is the concept of mizaj or temperament, and that also can have a bearing on the individual's recovery. So these are the 6 lifestyle factors. As you can see, the air and environment, which is a whole subject, and then food and drinks, and physical activity and rest, mental activity and rest or peace, and then really the individual elimination or retention, and then the sleep and wakefulness. So these 6 lifestyle factors, as I said, are the causes of helping us to maintain our balance. And if one or more are not managed very well, then these slowly but surely lead to imbalance and then disease. Okay, one of the factors really which is very acute and has devastating effects on both acute and chronic COVID is stress. Modern lives are, we are living in chronic stress, which leads to compromising immune system as well as, breakdown of various other systems in the body. So let's look at this for a moment. Yeah, these are some of the images of our, and this is the detail or some more details on the stress response. Really, the stress is essential and necessary, but in small doses, and it's an emergency system, which when stress response is activated by the lifestyles that we choose to live in, then this is what happens. It turns off the digestive system, the immune system, disturbs the sleep, stops growth and repair, can affect sense of touch, and increases blood pressure and makes the blood much more thicker. And there are 3 main stages of the stress. The first stage is the stage of alarm, acute manifestation of stress, and you can see here that it has inflammation and pain. Many people today really are living in chronic inflammation and pain. The second is the stage of what's called resistance, i.e. Disappearance of acute manifestation. People are free from the symptoms short term. But then the third stage is the stage of exhaustion, loss of resistance. Here, degeneration, imbalance, and a collapse happens. And unfortunately, in terms of long COVID, many individuals are in this third stage. The opposite of the stress response is what is known as the relaxation response. And really, this is what we need to invoke or strengthen or develop in ourselves if we are to protect ourselves from the damaging effects of chronic continuous stress. So the relaxation response is very important. And this is the response in which healing and regeneration of the body takes place. And it's as its opposite, it increases the anabolic activity, i.e. the rebuilding of the body and storing nutrients. In this context of infection, it increases the immune activity, improves the digestion and urinary function, and this relaxation response is also known as the parasympathetic nervous system, and activated by rest, relaxation, positive thinking is essential for elimination of waste and important for well-being. Now, just to really recap that, it's activated by rest, relaxation, and positive thinking. So if we go back really and think about the earlier stage of this COVID-19, how much fear was generated then, and even today, if you look around, you'll see deep fear, not only in adults, but actually in children as well. And some of the global media continues to create a frenzy of fear. And really, fear is something which creates disease all around, but in particular lowers the immune function. Again, the importance of nutrition and food in dealing with long COVID. I just let you read this, that our modern diet really is also known as a deadly diet. And here is something which, if you haven't come across this before, then you might find it interesting. What role modern degenerative diet plays in creation of both chronic and acute diseases. Okay. There is wealth of research as well as the traditional wisdom from societies where people live mostly disease-free and long lives. There are a few core points that are useful for us to look at. One is really that the gut is very important, and in particular probiotics, friendly gut bacteria. Sufficient intake of vitamins and sufficient intake of minerals. Again, most of the modern foods are really deficient in all three of these nutrients. Again, specific information on groups of vitamin. Mostly people are short of B vitamins, and stress in particular depletes the individuals of the B vitamins in particular. And the fear also does that. So there's hardly an adult who doesn't need to supplement with the B group of vitamins. And in particular, in this COVID and long COVID, B vitamins do many things, but obviously they bring about relaxation and they promote energy and reduce the stress. Again, vitamin C is critical on a daily basis, but also in this context, it becomes really essential. And the best thing is to have a sufficient amount of vitamin C, and this is at least 1,000 units a day per adult. Vitamin D, again, there's been a lot of research and positive benefits of individuals using vitamin D, and especially with autumn and winter on its way, it's important that we really supplement with vitamin D. In terms of minerals, there are many minerals, but we'll just talk about few. Zinc is in particular important because it plays a major role in the immune system and its regulation. And as you can read from here, there is about 30% of the world population that's deficient in zinc alone, really. Right. Let's talk about some of the herbal remedies. Of course, the number one really is the black seed Nigella sativa. I think we already have mentioned this in the earlier webinars, but really, if you want to maintain your immunity, then this is a safe home remedy that should be used on a daily basis. And here I let you see this slide for a moment so that you can see the type of seed you can use or the oil and how much one needs to use. Yeah. And it can be used in many different ways. As you see, it can be mixed with 3 parts of raw organic honey. And that's very good really for use by children in particular. There is a caution here. Obviously, in pregnancy, it's better not to use this or to use it after due consultation with your healthcare practitioner. So this is number one in terms of herbal remedies, and really you can use this all the year round. It's safe as any food, yeah. Number two is the raw honey, raw organic honey, if possible, on a daily basis. And here again, I give you a few moments to look at the dose, both in terms of prevention as a prophylactic for COVID, but also to recover from COVID. Again, just as a caution, diabetic individuals need to be careful when using honey. Okay, olive leaf, really, this is something which many people are not aware of, but olive leaf is again very economical. It can be used on a daily basis. It can be used by the household, i.e. including children, and it can be used in many different forms, such as tea or capsules, for professional people, obviously, in other forms, such as the tincture. And again, it can be used as a preventative or used for dealing with long COVID. It not only prevents any viral infection, including really COVID, but also is a great energizer. So people who have fatigue, it will help them with the recovery of the fatigue. And then really, this is a remedy which, again, is very easily available. Originally, it comes from the Ayurvedic tradition, but it's used globally now, and particularly used by the Unani physician for a long time. And it's easily available, very economical. These are some of its other names. And really, it's one of the great tonic and adaptogenic. This adaptogenic is a concept really that we call it intelligent herbs, i.e. it helps to regulate the body and the mind in a way that whether it is a hyperfunction or a hypofunction, i.e. when the body is overworking, it brings it to center and balance, and when it's underworking, it brings the body and the mind to the center again. Now, really, in nature, God has created these things and these qualities, but in synthetic pharma, this intelligence doesn't exist. So that's why the dose in synthetic material is critical, whereas here the dose is a range, i.e. you can use 500 units of or a gram of ashwagandha or withenia, or you can use it 3 grams or 5 grams. And I know some individuals in very difficult situations that have used it up to 10 grams. So you can see the use of this. Interestingly, in Britain, for first time, there is a trial that's going on between a university and a department of an overseas government to see if this particular remedy can be helpful in the recovery from long COVID. And we know really from thousands of years of clinical case studies that it does. It works in all sorts of wonderful ways, and in particular in recovery of chronic diseases, including long COVID. Again, these are some of its uses. For those participants who are not suffering from acute or chronic COVID, obviously this particular remedy, like many others which we mentioned, you don't have to use it only when you have long COVID or acute COVID. You can use them on a daily basis in the right doses to prevent these acute and chronic illnesses from developing. So they're safe enough to be used while you're healthy, really to increase your health and well-being and to maintain your health. This is a little bit of information on the preparation. If you're able to use milk, then really this remedy works very well with milk, or you can use a vegan alternative. And as I said, the dose is a range, so from 1 to 3 grams once per day. And if you're trying to recover from the long COVID, then you can use it 3 times a day. Okay, this is something else which is called Shilajit, ashwagandha. Not many people know about this, but this is a natural substance, basically plants which are found in the Himalayas and parts of the Caucasus. You need to obviously ensure these are some of its other names. Again, really an amazing herb and remedy that can help people to recover from long COVID or any other chronic disease. And this is this is one of the great physician and scholar of Ayurvedic medicine, and really nearly 2,000 years ago, this is what he said about this substance. There is hardly any curable disease which cannot be controlled or cured with the aid of Shilajit by Charak. Okay, and this is how to use it really. Again, 1 to 3 grams with raw milk or a vegan alternative. Again, as a preventative once a day, and as a treatment 3 times a day. Okay. Now, I said that really the individuality matters. So essentially there are 4 temperaments, like the 4 seasons in nature. I'll let you see this slide and then we'll talk together on understanding this concept. So there is the spring, which is associated with qualities of being warm and moist, and summer, which associated qualities are hot and dry, and then autumn or fall, as they say in the States, which is associated with cold and dry quality, and then winter associated with cold and moist quality. And really, like there are 4 seasons, there are predominantly 4 types of individuals. Of course, the individuals can be a mixture of the 4, one or more of these qualities. As you know that as seasons move, there is an interlap or an interface between one season to another. So having this idea of the temperaments like the seasons, it can help to adopt the lifestyle and the diet and remedies as well towards the individualized approach. And really for those people who are interested, again, if you visit the College of Medicine and Healing Arts website, you'll be able to find more information on this concept and this idea of individuality. Okay, so thank you very much at this stage for being with us. What I like to do really is for the next stage of the program, I want to welcome Dr. Yasser Abu Namus, who has kindly joined us from USA in Pennsylvania. He's a family physician, and he's going to share some of his own work and experiences with us. So Dr. Yasser, if you kindly like to share with us something about your own self and your work, and then in particular your work with some of your patients around long COVID.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Jazakallah khairan, Hakim Saab. Can everyone hear and see me okay?
Anyone who's not able to, maybe they put a hand up or some signal or something.
Perfect. We're getting some feedback that it's working. So, alhamdulillah, bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah, rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri, wa ahlul uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. As Hakim Saab mentioned, my name is Yasser Abu Namus. I reside currently in Eastern Pennsylvania in the US. And before I go any further, I'd just like to make a note. Anyone who's been sitting and listening, might be good to just take a stretch, stand up and kind of, energize the limbs. And for those who often with the Zoom meetings are walking, doing other tasks, maybe to pause and take 3 deep breaths in through the nose and out through the mouth. I think with these Zoom meetings, we can often forget some of our physical context. So as Hakim Saab mentioned, I practice family medicine here in Eastern Pennsylvania in the US. I was blessed with the opportunity to meet Hakim Salim in 2017. And since that time, I've enrolled in the College of Medicine and Healing Arts diploma for Tibb. And I pray that with Allah's guidance and his facilitation that I'm able to complete that course and inshallah engage in practicing of Tibb as well in the future. So I'm currently along the course of study. And so in my current practice of medicine, I do my best to incorporate a lot of the natural methods and methodologies and essentially the framework for holistic healing, although at the current time I'm practicing as we would call maybe industrialized medicine. So what I'd like to do is, Hakim Salim provided a beautiful overview and very helpful contextualization of long COVID, especially as it stands in the world. And indeed, in my anecdotal and personal practice, I'm seeing a number of patients who are suffering with symptoms anywhere from 4 weeks to 4 months to even a year out. And I'd like to share one case study, one example of a young man actually, who went through similar issues and what we provided and what we attempted to provide in the course of his care and how that sort of evolved with him. If at any point we have questions, please make a note of them and we'll take questions at the end, inshallah. So I'll share a brief presentation here. And Bismillah. So just as some background on this individual, which as Hakim Saab mentioned, the individual is the key to the treatment. And in fact, it's more important, they say, to know the person who has a disease than the type of person that a disease has. And so this individual is a 32-year-old male, initials IH. He does have a past medical history, which is important to take note of. These are issues that we'll see either became flared up and exacerbated or themselves complicated his recovery from COVID. So history of seasonal allergies, weight issues bordering on obesity, exercise-induced asthma, so issues with breathing that we can see potentially could be complicated as he recovers from COVID. Situational anxiety, not treated with any medications, but in certain situations finds himself to be experiencing physical as well as emotional symptoms of anxiety, and mild sleep apnea. Married with 1 child, that's the stage of life he's in, and works in healthcare as an educator. And probably most importantly, especially as it relates to his symptom manifestation as well as symptom management, my analysis of his temperament or his mizaj is that he is of the spring type with a subtype of summer. And this would align with his stage of life, but this is particularly relevant as we see some of the imbalances that he manifests pre-infection as well as after the infection. So currently my assessment is that he has some imbalances towards premature coldness and excess moisture, which we can see in aspects of his comorbidities and his body habitus, which is essentially, the weight struggles that he had. So I'll provide here a brief timeline of what he experienced. And just a moment here, forgive me. So in spring of 2020, very early in the pandemic, perhaps late March, this individual was diagnosed with COVID. Thankfully, he had a mild course overall when it comes to, relatively speaking, relative to other individuals who were hospitalized or who were passed away. His primary symptoms included headaches, fatigue, certainly myalgias, which essentially means muscle aches and pains, anosmia, which was the symptom that was emerging at that time, is very common with COVID. And that essentially means a loss of smell, and the associated ageusia, which is a loss of taste. Also experienced lightheadedness, especially with positional changes, and just a general sense of feeling unwell with a mild dry cough. Thankfully, we should note he didn't experience any severe shortness of breath, no chest pain, and no fevers, interestingly. At the time, Muhsin Clinic actually published a publicly available COVID protocol, which was shared with him, and he followed it pretty closely, actually. And that protocol includes a lot of the things that we just witnessed or heard from Hakim Salim, which includes black seed, honey, the olive leaf, whether in the form of tea, tincture, or other form, as well as the avoidance of negative emotions, negative states, a promotion of spiritual connection, the utilization of vitamin C, and the utilization of ajwa dates, and really trying to avoid elements in the diet that would be heavy on digestion, such as animal proteins and fats. So trying to keep a very light diet that promotes rest, digestion, and assimilation of the food into one's healing as opposed to blocking one's healing. And so similarly in this individual's care, really emphasized adequate rest, sleep in particular, both at night and the qaylula, which is a nap during the day. And then really trying to avoid excessive use of technology and stress. In particular, during that time, the news cycle was getting quite stressful, especially as cases were adding up logarithmically, just trying to avoid that cycle of negativity. Alhamdulillah, within about a week of following the protocol and trying to implement these factors into his life, symptoms were improving and mostly resolving. The main things that continued or persisted a week later were the smell and the taste issues, as well as the easy fatigability. So it transitioned from anosmia, which is a lack of smell, to parosmia, which is a distorted sense of smell, and that affected his sense of taste as well. And the easy fatigability was something that was quite marked, actually. So, at rest, there wasn't really an experience of fatigue, but in resuming any sort of physical or mental activity, it was noted that his energy was not quite what it used to be. And there was an associated lightheadedness, as I mentioned, whenever he would shift from lying down to sitting or sitting to standing. And so that was something to make note of. So this continued until about the 4-week mark. And this is about the time that, as Hakim Salim mentioned, it's sort of the demarcation for, acute COVID to post-acute or long COVID, and some of the symptoms that people continue to experience, which, as we've heard, could occur in almost a third of individuals. And so at the 4-week period, the individual was reporting that most of his symptoms were better, but still the taste and smell were still off. And this was affecting, appetite, as well as even just the ability to discern certain tastes. And also there was an interesting observation that was made, which was that, the individual, as we mentioned, had experienced some baseline anxiety at situational anxiety, but was noting that stress seemed to create anxiety more easily. And that in association with that, he was experiencing a rapid heart rate subjectively, and that there was a chest tightness, a difficulty with breathing, although the breathing was actually normal, oxygen levels were normal. And so this was kind of a curious or even maybe potentially concerning marker at the 4-week mark. So at this point, in addition to the natural methods of the herbs and spices that we were recommending, as well as some of the dietary changes, we incorporated a specific remedy that is a saffron-based remedy called Revive, which is sold by the Muhsin Health Clinic. And this is just a personal note that I personally tend to utilize these products because they're readily available and they're of high quality. Of course, you could provide individuals with just the raw ingredient recommendations. Oftentimes, though, I found in my clinical practice, the follow through on that is less common than if you provide them a ready-made product that you trust and that you can attest to. So Revive contains saffron, and then eventually we switched to a Shilajit mixture and elixir, which is also produced by Muhsin Health Clinic. And the Shilajit, as Hakim Salim mentioned, is this natural phytocomplex that essentially, as plants break down over hundreds of years in this Himalayan rock, it's then suffused with an amazing degree of vitamins and minerals, especially minerals that people who are ill could be lacking. And so the Shilajit, the attempt there is to promote a revitalization of the individual, a repletion of the mineral deficiencies that he may be experiencing, and to really just promote kind of a warming effect, given the imbalances towards coldness that we were observing. And then last, because I was personally kind of stuck on this issue of the smell and taste, I did reach out to a prominent ENT researcher, ear, nose, and throat physician, and inquired sort of what the current recommendations might be. Interestingly, there really wasn't any sort of specific treatment, and there still remains to be a specific treatment for or cure for this issue in sort of the industrialized medical paradigm. But he did recommend to me, it seems that a high dose of vitamin D, a high dose of vitamin A, and a substance called alpha lipoic acid were very useful in treating smell and taste. And as we'll see, these distortions did seem to improve with this regimen. So the vitamin D was on average 5 to 10,000 units a day. The vitamin A was roughly 5,000 units a day, and these are in IU, international units. And then the alpha lipoic acid, anywhere from 400 to 600 milligrams a day. Now, just to note, as with any condition, of course, you'd want to consult your personal healthcare practitioner, but especially for pregnant individuals, taking vitamin A would not be recommended. It can lead to abnormalities with fetal development, especially if taken in too large of a quantity. So it's something to just make note of. And so that was sort of what we provided for him at the 4-week mark. And thankfully, things did continue to improve. But by August, of 2020, this individual is now 4 or 5 months post-acute infection. And this is when in the public media, reports were beginning to emerge around long-haul COVID and sort of long COVID. And some of the unfortunate sort of horror stories that we were hearing about people who couldn't get out of bed for months after their infection, debilitating neurologic symptoms, fatigue, headaches, even severe depression and anxiety. And indeed, what we found with our young gentleman was that the anxiety seemed to be getting worse or more easily triggered. And the heart rate that he was experiencing seemed to be more rapid and more frequent. And the shortness of breath that he would feel in those settings was starting to become more acute. So we did perform a chest x-ray, and thankfully it was negative. And that is the case oftentimes that any cardiac studies such as EKG, chest x-ray, they're often negative in these individuals. And that kind of tells us that it's something related more so to the after effects of this infection, potentially even the mind-body connection. And so at this point, we sort of stopped and did more of a deep dive into emotional health, his perception around his own health and the world around him. And we did a lot of work around not just the mind-body connection in general, but specifically the effects and impacts of thinking on his emotional health and his physical health. We did recommend that he begin a meditative practice, and this is something that might be foreign or not easy for many people to initiate. And so there are techniques and practices that we did recommend that he begin. And there are actually online courses that provide introduction to Islamic meditation for people who might not be as familiar with or comfortable with exploring outside of the tradition for these things. We also recommended initiating ashwagandha, as Hakim Saab mentioned, for its adaptogenic benefits as well as its benefits on the stress response. So this was kind of in the mid to late August. By September, as the seasons were changing, we did recommend that he initiate a nightly utilization of a herbal tea preparation called Detox and Slim. And Detox and Slim is, again, just another preparation that Muhsin Health provides, but it's an excellent warming tea that can be used after meals to help individuals with assimilating their nutrition into their wellness. And then the last thing that I often use as a tool that I recommended that he utilize in this seasonal transition between the summer and the fall was what's called a comprehensive elimination diet. And in the course of the elimination diet, the attempt is to try to reset the immune system by healing the gut. As Hakim Saab mentioned, the sort of the bacterial environment, the ecosystem of the gut is critical. And oftentimes through the ingestion of antibiotics, potentially steroids, additives such as colorings, preservatives in our food, or even just the high quantity of sugar and sugar-laden foods, the gut bacteria and the biome of the gut, which is the ecosystem of microorganisms in the gut, can be disrupted. And 60% of the immune system is stated to be lining the gut. And obviously this makes sense. As you ingest foreign substances, the immune system is reacting to that and trying to determine what's safe and what isn't. And so this can lead to many problems over the long term. And so healing the gut is one of the critical elements or steps in most people's healing. And so we recommended a comprehensive elimination diet, whereby for a period of a few weeks, he selectively removed certain potential triggers or insults from his diet, and then reincorporated them slowly into his meals so that he would be able to determine which of them might be causing the problem. Within 6 to 8 weeks, he was able to find that he actually had improved energy, experienced some modest weight loss, and significantly less anxiety, which we felt was a significant a win for him, if you will. By the end of 2020, alhamdulillah, he was able to actually regain full function of his smell and taste, and he continued the vitamin A, D, and alpha lipoic acid regimen throughout. This point, though, brings us to sort of the final piece, the fulcrum in his story, which was the spring of 2021, just a few months ago. And at this point, as we mentioned, he suffered from significant allergies, and it was a pretty severe allergy season here in the Northeast. And this actually triggered what we feel was a lot of inflammation in his body. What he noticed was a significant degree of fatigue and headaches that were new, and a degree of allergy symptoms that were unprecedented for him. And then the heart rate issue actually became manifested in a physical and objective sense. So his heart rate resting was actually in the 90s, sometimes even the high 90s. And with very minimal exertion and physical activity, it went into the 100s and the 1-teens. So this was something that was concerning for him as well as his family members. And after sort of going deeper into the history and kind of inquiring with him about some of the factors of his life, he did know that he was inconsistent with some of the regimen that he was using before. And so some of the key things that we advised at that point was to resume the Shilajit, primarily for immunomodulation, for heart health and vitality, and for overall warming. He resumed the nightly detox and Slim. He initiated the immune support capsules from Muhsin, which including, among other things, include the vital black seed and olive leaf, and reduced his sugar intake and carbohydrate intake in general, and redoubled his meditation and breathing efforts. And alhamdulillah, within 2 to 3 months, he was able to actually alleviate his symptoms. And we found that his heart rate is back into the 60s and 70s at resting, which was his baseline. And so that's kind of a walk through a year in the journey of this young man who experienced the acute COVID, actually not to a very severe degree, and then had this sort of fluctuating course of symptoms chronically over about 10 to 12 months. To summarize, we employed sort of a 3-tiered model, which is sort of the basis of any natural or holistic approach. So really targeting life balance and the attempts at making sure that anything from his regimen at a lifestyle level, any imbalances there were corrected. We utilized treatment in the form of supplements, in the form of foods, and a spiritual connection, which was more of a subtle underlying theme throughout. And so in the area of life balance, there was a significant emphasis on physical, mental, and emotional rest. This is tied to the relaxation response that Hakim Salim was referring to. And in particular, we focused on sleep and meditative practice. Of course, for those who are Muslim, engaging in prayer and dhikr, and trying to formalize some of those things and bring life to those practices that sometimes for some of us can be dead or ritualized, is a very important component of that. And then we reduced the intake of sugars and carbohydrates in particular, and utilized this tool called the comprehensive elimination diet to promote that. In the area of treatment via herbs and supplements, to summarize, we utilized many of the products that Muhsin Health Clinic provides, including Revive, which is a saffron-based supplement, Shilajit, which contains saffron as well, and so therefore can be optimum in these kinds of cases. The immune support capsules, Detox and Slim, and Ashwagandha, along with vitamins A, D, C, and alpha lipoic acid. And then finally, at the level of spirituality, for anyone of any background, especially if they have a faith background, I believe it's important to promote an emphasis on spiritual connection and regimen, regardless of what their practice looks like. And particularly for Muslims, this is a critical component of our daily life and our daily cycle. And so encouraging this overtly can be useful, but even at a subtle level, attempting to provide a consistent sort of presence of support and compassion, while we as practitioners internalize the notion that God is in control, this can be some of the most sort of powerful interventions of all. And so here I'll conclude. Of course, we know the saying of our beloved Prophet ﷺ, in which he said, there is no disease that Allah has created except that he has also created its treatment. And so we should have yaqeen that this, including among all other illnesses, does have approaches that we can take and that we are empowered with by our Creator's permission and by his fadl, his grace, and his bounty to utilize in the treatment. And we should also recognize that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ himself gave us this guidance, and many of these recommendations have been provided today. So with that, I'll turn it back to Sayyidi Hakim Salim and to the moderators as well. Jazakumullah khairan.
Thank you so much, Dr. Yasser, for taking us on the journey of, the young man and really his experiences and how you helped him through the use of lifestyle, the herbal medicines, the supplements, the dietary interventions and the spiritual context and reconnection to heal from his long COVID. And of course, even though it was a year journey, that it was really a journey of his development in his health and well-being, and a successful journey. So we have our Q&A. We have just about 26 minutes. And what we'll do is we'll open up the chat. Whatever questions you have to do with either the first presentation or Dr. Yasir's case, which he presented, please do post them in the chat, and then we'll get through as many as we can. Okay, so we're already having some questions in, so we'll get right into it. Question from Imran Khan. My family and I, including children and the elderly, are 2 weeks into COVID. What herbal products should I be taking now, and for how long? I have a similar case to what Dr. Yasir describes.
Okay, so Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I mean, the answer to the question is that obviously it's better to find a local naturopathic Unani physician. So it would be better to have someone to take care of you and your family. And if they have their own protocol and guidelines, which I'm sure they will, and you could share some of what you've learned from this webinar. So that would be the best thing, really, depending on where you're living, which country or which location.
Question from Farah Miraz. Assalamu alaikum. For those who are depleted and have a weak immune system but without COVID, is the preventative dose of the supplements sufficient to rebuild their immunity, or should they be taking the supplements more frequently or at a higher dose once at the preventative daily frequency?
Yes, again, it would depend on the individual and their lifestyle and their age, but the maintenance dose is really the minimum. My advice would be that they start with the maintenance dose and then use it in the 3 times a day or double it and see how that is. In particular, if they're living in cold environment or their lifestyle is very demanding and hectic, then really the higher dose would be better for them. And again, many of these remedies, whether they're single herbs such as ashwagandha, or the formulations, in the cases of our remedies, they're 100% natural, and you know, there should be no problem with using those. And the other thing which might be useful for people to know is that really the RDA, for example, and recommended daily allowances, these are very inadequate. For example, vitamin C, the daily recommended allowances depends on which country you're in, but it's about 60 units. Now, that's just to stop you having scurvy, acute scurvy. But if you really want to have health, then you need 500 units to 1,000. For example, I myself use 1,000 units a day, and in winter or when I'm traveling, I would take it, a couple of thousands. So these nutrients, there's very little in our bodies and in our foods, so you can double it or triple it. You have to be careful, but generally they're very safe. So I hope that helps with the last question. What do you think?
Claudia,
Sorry, Hussein, can I ask Dr. Yasir, any experiences of yourself with the patients in terms of this issue of depletion and devitalization?
Yes, I mean, I think generally speaking, if I can be frank, most of us living modern lifestyles, and definitely many of my patients, I think at baseline have this issue of depletion. When it comes to COVID, what I notice is that there is an acute exacerbation of this problem, and it becomes very manifest and very clear. And this is particularly clear in the individuals that I find who are struggling with persistent fatigue, the lightheadedness, and some of the symptoms related to their overall vitality. And what I do find consistently is for those who do implement the recommendations of reintegrating whole natural foods into their diet, as well as some of the supplements we've discussed, they do have gradual incremental improvement. I've seen this many times over. I've seen it in my own life, in my own families, and then have witnessed it among my patients as well. And I think that the depletion that we are citing, which is a general term, there are, although we don't necessarily have to rely entirely on these, but there are corroborative scientific studies that do indicate that in particular, there are certain illnesses that are correlated with the depletion of certain minerals or vitamins. And we definitely see that in particular in COVID, a lack of vitamin D deficiency we saw was directly correlated and directly linked to poor outcomes from COVID. In fact, higher rates of hospitalization, higher rates of death in those who had vitamin D deficiency. And usually vitamin D deficiency bespeaks of many other sort of co-occurring issues as well. So I hope that's helpful.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah, Hussein, there is a Professor Kamal who has raised his hand to ask the question.
Sure. He's actually asked a question in the chat, so we're almost to his question. Couple of things. One person's asking, will you be sharing this recording? If we are recording this, and of course we'll get in touch with everyone about what's happening. You're all on our email list, you're all registered, so we'll do that. Question from Claudia Zeb. Could you kindly advise what kind of probiotics you would recommend?
Any good quality probiotics would do, really. Yeah.
Numair is asking, what is good vegan alternative to cow's milk? Rice, almond, or soy?
Well, I think we have a recipe, so we'll be able to share with all the participants that.
Yeah, we've got an almond milk recipe. Is that the one?
Yeah. So we can share that later on. Yeah.
Homemade almond milk. Awesome. Professor Dr. Kamal is asking, are we are receiving foods, water, vegetables, fruits, medicinal values as probiotic, ORAC value antioxidants, and immunobiotic from nature, not only that, natural oxygen and shelter? I think it's more of a comment than a question, really. So thank you for sharing that. Safia, you discussed many different herbal remedies. Do you incorporate all of those daily, or is there one you recommend taking daily?
Could we just go back to the comments by Professor Kamal?
Absolutely.
Did you want to share that yourself, sir? Can you unmute them and share that? He's an Ayurvedic scholar, so that would be useful to have his contribution.
Yeah, we can see if that's possible. Can we get them unmuted?
No.
Dr. Kamal, if you are able to unmute yourself, you should be able to now. So please do feel free to do that. We'll move on in the meanwhile. So Safia is asking, you discussed many different herbal remedies. Is there anyone in particular or all together?
Well, I would say really there are two remedies which are very necessary from herbal, if I can call honey the herbal. So daily use of raw organic honey together with black seed. But I myself personally, again, use ashwagandha on a daily basis, as well as regular use of olive leaf tea. But you know, if there's one remedy, I would say that's the black seed and honey.
Thank you. We had a couple of questions on the Facebook live chat. So Zainab is asking, how does one figure out their temperament?
Yeah, that's a very good question, really. The best thing is that, you know, they attend a small course, which we run occasionally, a weekend course on understanding your temperament, or they can join one of our online course to understand, because really that needs guidance. you really need to work with somebody who can take you through, or the other alternative is to visit an appropriately trained and qualified physician who can help you to come to the assessment of your individual mizaj. So this is something for which you need either to go and see a practicing experienced physician or to attend a course under guidance of someone.
HH is asking, Salams, my husband had acute COVID. Post-COVID, he has developed asthma. Anything we can do besides Himalayan salt inhaler? He is on a brown pump daily to manage it, but would love to stop that totally and use something natural. Does Unani Tibb deal with asthma?
Yes, actually, Unani Tibb deals with asthma very well and very successfully. My own practice is in Leicester, and here the South Asian community has a lot of asthma for various reasons, and Unani has some very good remedies. Again, because asthma can be a difficult condition, and at a time it can be life-threatening. So it's again better that you go and see an experienced, practitioner or physician for that. But few tips really: eliminate dairy from the person's diet, and eliminate sugar, except for jaggery or raw organic honey, and really eliminate two other things. One is cold water, and finally any sour foods. So those things will help, but again, the person needs to see the right kind of therapist or a physician for that.
Thank you. Vlora is asking, what would you suggest for kids who suffer anxiety and insomnia before bed? We really try our best in eating traditional food and natural supplements.
Okay, yes, two things really. One is not to do, before 2 hours before bedtime, they should not engage in any electronic media. This is must really. And number two, ashwagandha is amazing because it is a de-stress and a sleep promoter. And if the milk suits the child or the children in this question, then really a small amount of powdered ashwagandha in warm milk will promote their sleep.
Thank you. Claudia is asking another question. I experienced strong sensitivity to light during COVID, which is still lingering. Would you have any advice?
Do you have anything on that, Dr. Yasir?
I would only ask to clarify if that sensitivity is like a visual sensitivity, or is that on the skin or some other type of symptom? And to be frank, it's not something that I encounter regularly, and there may be other issues related to ophthalmologic health, so eye health, that need to be evaluated. So it could be a good idea to see someone first, such as an optometrist or ophthalmologist, before considering it directly related to COVID. So I think that would be important to take a comprehensive approach there.
Mm-hmm. All right. Yeah. Thank you for that. Any other questions?
Julie is asking, Assalamu alaikum Hakim, if someone should be eating warm and moist foods, would ashwagandha and Shilajit be recommended as a preventative?
If somebody is eating warm and moist food,
yeah, would ashwagandha and Shilajit be recommended as a preventative?
For COVID? Are we talking about COVID here?
You didn't specify, but in the context of this webinar, I can assume yes.
Yes, I think especially if there's an element of anxiety or stress, then ashwagandha would be recommended. But again, I would say that use the Nigella sativa as well, really.
Asad Iqbal is asking, for treatment mixtures that include the raw milk, are you able to substitute this for pasteurized normal shop milk?
I'm not sure really. I mean, if it's possible to use the real thing, then go for the real thing. Substitution is always a secondary thing.
Ozlam is asking, I think, is a technical question. And I don't think we mentioned this, but that question nevertheless is neem powder or leaves equivalent of ivermectin? I don't know if that's a question we can answer really.
Maybe not.
Yeah. Kashif Hussain is asking, I know someone who had colon cancer. They cut off 6 inches of the colon. After their treatment, their immune system has gone to 0. It's been 5 years. You mentioned most the immune system is here. So what would you recommend to replenish the immune system?
If in a case like that, again, I would be responsible and refer them to a practitioner really. Otherwise, we've shared what we think are the immune enhancing foods and vitamins and minerals and herbs in this presentation. They could look at it, but otherwise, when there has been a pathology in the individual and a deep pathology, as a caution, I would say go and see an experienced and a practicing naturopath or someone like that really.
Juveria is asking, the recommended vitamins and minerals and herbal remedies shared in this presentation, should we be having them every day even though we don't have COVID to protect from it?
The answer is yes.
Dr. Shabana Parvez is asking, does Hakim Saab agree or believe that the COVID virus and the vaccine have a temperament that is cold and dry or cold and moist?
Can you repeat the question? Dr. Shabana Marshall always asks, some profound questions. So
does the COVID virus and or the vaccine or both have a temperament that is cold and dry / cold and moist?
To be honest, is really the COVID virus being identified? That's the first question I would raise, yeah? And if so, could we have a sample of that so we can put it through our tests and see what temperament it has? And the vaccine, we are no experts on vaccine. We don't know nothing about vaccine, and nor are we interested. We are physicians and therapists of traditional Unani medicine, naturopathic traditions. Our materia medica and our approach is completely different. Personally, I don't subscribe to dangerous experimental methods of intervention when we have safe, effective, economical ways of safeguarding human health. And therefore, why do we really need those kind of things? If individuals wish to have them, and that's their individual choice, so their individual physician recommends, and that's something else. Let's get back to something which is that the whole basis of Hippocratic medicine, which is what our brothers in industrial medicine and our sisters in industrial medicine take an oath or subscribe to. Really, the practice of medicine is an individual matter between a trained and accredited physician and their individual patient. So what's happened to all that, Dr. Yasser and other colleagues who are from those schools? Why have we made the whole thing industrial by putting stuff into people globally? So, and it's breaking the economic structure as well as the human structure. So why do we need these things? That's a question I want to raise, while we have safe, effective nutrition and remedies and other methods to rebuild the human health. And so again, the question is, what do we really know about this virus in any real meaningful sense? And two, what do we know about the vaccinations, and how many vaccinations are we talking about? The Chinese vaccination or the European vaccination, or the American vaccination, or the Great British vaccination. They're fighting it all over. Some people have one vaccination, and then other countries say, oh, we don't recognize these. Frankly, it's a mess. The sooner we get out of this quagmire, the better it would be for our health, well-being in every sense of the word, as well as our freedoms and liberties. And again, we're providing natural solutions. We're not selling vaccinations of any company or any country. Okay, any other questions?
Yeah, just giving that a second to sink in, Hakeem-sir. Someone's asking, and again, I'm not sure, perhaps, I don't know if Dr. Yasser is able to give any insight because it's obviously a sensitive matter, but somebody's asking, I'm currently isolating due to COVID positive. However, I'm nursing my 10-month-old son. Is it okay to continue nursing naturally or extract and bottle feed?
I think in this setting, the recommendation in most cases is to try to isolate from family members. This is the sort of official recommendation of the US sort of governmental agencies. I'm not sure about the UK or where the questioner is from. Although in the case of people who have child rearing responsibilities, especially nursing mothers, it would probably be unrealistic and perhaps even damaging to separate an infant from the mother. And it's therefore recognized that you may just simply have to nurse the baby and do everything else you can to protect the baby from any other harms. At this point, the likelihood that the baby has been exposed from the nursing mother is relatively high. And in many cases, when people have children, if they're not able to remove themselves from the household or stay in one corner of the house, then this is sometimes an unavoidable aspect of the quarantine or the isolation. That's all I'll say there. But as far as the breast milk, everything else should be safe and not provide any harm, inshallah, to the baby. And the other reassuring component, although we of course pray that your child as well as all children are protected, is that the overwhelming evidence is that children are fine most of the time when it comes to COVID infection. It doesn't mean that we should of course be reckless in terms of their exposure, but when it comes to their recovery, alhamdulillah, it seems that they have a nearly 100% recovery rate.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Yasser, for that. Okay, I think we're coming to the last 5 minutes. So any last minute questions?
Yeah, we have plenty of questions, so we'll carry on. Famida Haq is asking, is there anything that may help with cognitive deficits and sleep attacks as a result of long COVID?
Can you just repeat that, Anna?
Is there anything that may help with the cognitive deficits and sleep attacks as a result of long COVID?
Again, Ashwagandha really helps with the cognitive functions. There are other remedies which can help. The B complex will help with the cognitive side of things. So Ashwagandha and a B complex would help with that, really.
Dr. K. Radhakrishnan is asking to Dr. Salim Khan, have you studied the effects of pepper, ginger, and turmeric for treating COVID-19? Very important medicinal spices.
Yes, the reason why I didn't mention these really, that this is a webinar for the ordinary person, and how many remedies can we really introduce to the public, because people get very confused. I myself use black pepper on a daily basis, but and turmeric obviously is well known. What was the third one? So black pepper, turmeric, and ginger. Ginger. I mean, ginger again. Ginger is one of the top remedies. So thank you for pointing that out. But really, how many remedies can we mention on a webinar of this nature is very limited. But I would subscribe to all those three really. In particular,
I'm using it, doctor. I'm using it.
I am using it, yes.
Yeah, I'm a person using it. I'm working on ethno medicine, actually.
Sorry, you're using those three, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Very good.
The details are in, I have given it in my LinkedIn. You can go to my LinkedIn.
Oh, okay, thank you. We'll share it with your permission to the participant and on our website.
Okay.
Yeah, Hakeem Saab, it's just coming to 3:30.
So if we have permission of the participants, and if there are any other questions, we will deal with those in the next few minutes. If not, then we can conclude. So are there any questions in the chat box or?
Absolutely, there's definitely so many more questions. So I can continue. Somebody's asking about.
Sorry, can we agree to a time frame so people who want to leave, they know? Shall we say no more than maximum 10 more minutes? So.
Yeah, that works. Of course, that works.
All right, so go ahead.
Somebody's asking about ashwagandha in the UK. Can you get it? What's the alternative name? And I guess this is for all herbs. What is the availability? Where can you get them from? Is that something we can answer?
Yes, we can answer that. Really, specifically, ashwagandha or ashwagandha should be available from your herbalist, depending where you are. It depends where the person is and who's their herbalist or naturopathic physician. It is a remedy which is very easily available in UK and in the United States and in Pakistan, and of course also available in India. So this is something, and again, it's a very safe remedy, easily available. The only question is you want to make sure that it's good quality, yeah, and not outdated on the shelves sitting around for many years.
We also had a resources list from the previous COVID webinar series of some suppliers of supplements, which you can have a look at through the website as well. Claudia Zeb is asking again, my husband is experiencing sinus issues since COVID to the extent that he cannot breathe through his nose, especially at night. Would you kindly have any advice?
Again, the first advice is, to go and consult somebody, but obviously sinus issues, the first thing to do is to eliminate all dairy. Yeah. Cheese, milk, apart from maybe a little bit of bioactive yogurt during the day, eliminate everything else. So that will be the first thing. And start using black pepper and ginger. Maybe a ginger tea would help, obviously, yeah, because it will increase the circulation and lessen the phlegm and the mucus. And maybe steam inhalation, really.
Steam inhalation.
Steam
with 3
inhalation.
leaves of pepper.
Yeah.
3 leaves of pepper. Crushed pepper leaves. Pepper leaves is enough.
Yeah, and steam inhalation, and if it's possible to use some essential oil from frankincense. Yeah. Okay, any other people who haven't asked the question?
So Kamila is asking, my daughter lost her voice and still has a cough post-COVID, 8 weeks. Is this formula good for her voice to return?
Which formula? Yes, again, I think the steam inhalation will help to clear the sinuses and the throat.
Right.
That's very important. And I would say that using the essential oil, frankincense will help with that. And again, really drinking warm water on a regular basis with some raw organic honey if it's appropriate.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll see if we can get through some more. So there's one comment, somebody saying Flora is sharing. I just wanted to share my family's experience with COVID. we had in August and used natural supplements to successfully go through it without any complications. Alhamdulillah, related to loss of smell and taste, we used homeopathic sanguinaria 200C, which helped a lot.
That's very good. Sanguinaria 200, yeah?
Sanguinaria 200C, yeah.
This is very important information because, loss of taste and smell is a big issue in COVID, and it's not easy to recover this. For those of us who are homeopath, obviously, we look forward to trying this with our clients and patients. I mean, I can see, forgive me, Hussein, but I can see some names that I know are very experienced practitioners and physicians. In the last 5 minutes, it would be very good if they were to share some of their own experiences for both us but also people who are listening to this webinar globally, how or what specific techniques or remedies they found which help with their clients.
Anyone in particular you have in mind, Hakim Sir?
I don't want to mention the names in case they feel obliged to answer, but I know some very good colleagues. I can see their names, and if they wish to share with us and with the public, that would, I think, would be very useful experience and information.
Yeah, absolutely. Please feel free to unmute yourselves.
No.
Dr. Kamal is still in the room. I'm not sure if he is able to interact or.
I have already told that it is the details on the link. Just use it. Very, very good for all these things. Preventing, natural prevention. Just please, because I'm in a hurry. That's why. Otherwise, I would have told all these things. In LinkedIn, I have given it. Please.
Okay. All right.
Please share it.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Okay. Any other questions or sharing?
Okay, so Isabel is asking, Assalamu alaikum, I had COVID more than 3 months ago with acute symptoms, but without the need to be hospitalized. It has left me with high D-dimer levels, high blood pressure, and disrupted menstrual cycle, things that I have never had in my life. What can I do about it, please, without using allopathic medicines?
There are some experienced female colleagues in the room. If anyone wants to answer that question, really, they would have more experience of managing these symptoms. No? I suppose with some questions like these, what we can do is we can try and come back to you getting some feedback from other colleagues, what worked for them, and then share it rather than just trying to pretend that we can answer all the questions immediately. Yeah.
Michael Cashmore is saying, a comment really, saying, I would like to emphasize the importance of healthy exercise, especially at the intermediate stages of recovery, to establish recovery and strength and increasing strength and vitality. The methods used are around Qigong, Tai Chi, yoga methods with an important emphasis on the holistic principles. I say all this because it is evidently missing in the program. My experience incorporates both the intake suggested and the physical education approaches.
Michael, thank you very much. Michael, would you be amenable to maybe just do a page from yourself on this, and then we can share as part of this webinar for people? Yes, I agree with you that exercise and movement, we didn't kind of cover it here, but it's a very neglected area. So if you were, I know that you teach this, so if you were able to put together maybe a page or two of what you've just said and elaborate and give some safe guidelines, then we would be happy to share this on our website as a resource acknowledgement, acknowledgement to yourself. So if you like to do that, that'd be wonderful.
Yeah, Michael Cashmore is here. I'm not sure if he's able to unmute himself, but I'm sure he got that message, and he did have his hand up there. So thank you. Let's see, is there anything else? Some more comments. There's so many comments and questions.
As we're coming to the end, it would be good to give us some boosts. Please pick up some good comments so we can end with those maybe.
Okay. Professor Dr. Kamal Krishnan is asking, is actually written quite a few comments, but one that stands out, it says, happy and joyful learning from your esteemed organization. He says, egalitarian society and brilliant fellow experts. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we need encouragement really to carry on this work. As you know, far as natural medicines are concerned and complementary and alternative medicines are concerned, they're often deprived of necessary oxygen as well as other resources. So any collaboration or comments or feedback would help us to, continue to organize these free webinars. So please share with us and also spread your own contribution and, share this with people.
Akim Sahib, if you have time, there's one clarification question I thought was important since we shared about Shilajit. There's an important question raised by Mona Hassan, Dr. Mona Hassan. So she says, Assalamu alaikum, why would consuming Shilajit elixir induce constipation in some people, and how could they consume Shilajit in a way to avoid causing constipation?
Okay, it's a very good question. Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Mona Hassan. Thank you. The reason why it would create constipation in some individuals, because their metabolism would be weak, but also the amount of minerals are so much in the Shilajit. That's why traditionally the resin of Shilajit was used in milk in small amounts to help make the bioavailability better and easier. So if the individual has the issue of constipation with the elixir, they can purchase the resins and then use those in a graduated dose, ideally with the appropriate milk, and that will get rid of the constipation. So I hope that helps. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thanks everyone for your comments and questions. And I'm really sorry we couldn't get around to everyone, but there's some really insightful questions and really useful comments shared. So thank you all. Akim Sahib, would inshallah you like to have the last words, inshallah, and wrap up?
Okay, so look, I want to thank you, Hussein, again, mashallah, for putting this so much work together. Parvez Abbasi Saab and Nomer and Dr. Yasser from the Pennsylvania, USA, and obviously everyone else who participated, and my colleagues, Dr. Radha Krishna and others who participated and made a contribution. Please stay in touch, and if you find that this work is valuable, and if you are a practitioner or a trainer, then let us know, share with us your expertise, and we will come back, and maybe in the early new year, we do another webinar and promote your experiences and work. And above all, I want to thank Allah for giving us this opportunity to be of benefit to His creation. Human beings are all one family, really. So part of the Islamic tradition is to be of service to humanity. And I hope Allah accepts our effort towards service of His creation. And thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum.